Here to give us his insights on the country's growing debt level and his policy rate projections, we have with us on the show SerPercivalPeña-Reyes, Director of the Ateneo Center for Economic Research and Development. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Let's get right to it. Do you agree that the country's debt level remains manageable?
Well, there are indications that it seems to be that way, but there we have to consider some caveats. Really, our debt to GDP growth is second fastest to Thailand due to the pandemic, and of course, while we can outgrow it by simply growing the economy, it will take some time to do that, considering that only a few sectors are pulling up growth in the country. Okay? So these are relatively low productivity sectors, in particularly accommodations and transport. So the latest second quarter GDP growth of 4.3% reflects this, and this could unnecessarily increase further the debt to GDP ratio, since we're working with a smaller denominator. So the concern really is about ballooning debt. No, there needs to be caution there still. Okay, we cannot simply outgrow the debt without deliberately spreading the sources of growth beyond these limited services sectors, which are, as I mentioned, low productivity sectors. Okay, so and also going back to the latest GDP figures, we see government expenditures and investments. Government expenditure actually decreased by 7.1%. Okay, and also on the investment side, it grew by just 0.04%. Okay, so there are indications that we are seeing problems of absorptive capacity and ease of doing business. So we really need to, still exercise prudence here.
Okay. And with the recent spike in prices, the weakening peso, and the slower than expected second quarter GDP, now do you think the BSP should announce rate cuts tomorrow?
Well, probably they would maintain, but eventually they would have to consider easing. And I think that was also mentioned by the economic managers, that they do intend to ease up on it, because of course there are implications on the spending side, okay, that would in turn have a dampening effect on economic growth. So they probably would want to consider that sooner or later, but we'll see.
Okay. And how worrying or how worried should we be about the country's inflation situation?
Well, it seems that the inflation is on a downtrend, okay, but there are, of course, both external and internal factors to consider. Okay, but externally we have, of course, oil prices to consider. Okay, we also have the Russia-Ukraine war still an issue. Okay, and we also need to consider marked slowdowns in wholesale and retail trade, construction, government services, agriculture, fishery, and forestry sector. Okay, which really hardly grew from last year. Okay, 0.2% in Q2 after growing 2.2% in Q1. Okay, so the sector actually shrunk by 1% between those two quarters, marked by a 7.5% drop in fishery and aquaculture output. And this could spell higher food prices down the line, worsening already escalating food prices overseas. So we have to really try our best also to stimulate particularly those sectors, in agriculture and fishery, because this would of course have inflationary implications on the country.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And with all things considered, what then would be your projection for the GDP in the second half? And do you really think we can still reach a full year government target of at least 6%? Because there's several economists who have talked about possibly 5.5 to all things considered 6%. Is there a big chance we hit 6 or at least 6.2%?
Well, our projection isn't quite far from them, around 5.3%. And, it's going to be hard really to meet that target of 6 to 7%.
Okay.
The government would have to review its assumptions for the coming year, really. And, the sources of growth really would have to be expanded because, it's like a basketball team. You're just relying on a few players to do the scoring.
Okay.
When potentially you could have everyone in the team contributing, but that's how it is. We need to rev up all of the possible engines that we could in order to grow the economy.
And just like to have a last question, with all things considered, you said if the country does a whole of team approach, let's say all the players step up, there is a chance of hitting the 6 to 6.5% for GDP growth
For this year,
Yes.
well, it's might be too late an effort.
Okay.
Like what happened to the Miami Heat, we were
Yes.
able to reach the finals but fell short of the title. Okay. We have to also probably temper our expectations for this year,
Okay.
but maybe gun for more aggressively higher growth next year.
Well, thank you very much for your insights and for joining us this morning. Thank you, Sir Percival Peña-Reyes, Director of the Ateneo Center for Economic Research and Development.
Thank you for having me.